Hello, and welcome to the Expanse. This is part 2 of my Azerite theory. If you haven't seen part 1, I highly suggest you do, as it ties directly into part 2. However, the long and short of part 1 is that Azerite and Elementium could be very similar, if not the same substance. Though, as those who have come from part 1 know, this end of the theory is the more pseudo/conspiracy end, and so things are going to get slightly weirder from here on out. It basically happens because me and the quacks don't know when to stop asking questions. And we'll actually begin with that, with the questions the quacks did not stop asking. The questions the quacks kept on asking was, where do the six magics, light, void, disorder, order, life, and death, fit into all of this? The Titans obviously have alignments to certain magics, so how does this relate to Azeroth and Azerite? Is it just spirit that gives Azeroth its power, or is it another source? And this is where, after raking through a few distinct and nearly unexplainable pieces of lore, stuff started to line up. And this is where the very strange analogy of universal blood also becomes important. Also, for those who know the intricacies of the human body, especially blood, I apologize, because this analogy is probably going to make you cringe. In World of Warcraft, the universe, or at the very least the Great Dark Beyond, can be described as being three major parts of blood. The first part is DNA. In WoW, this is spirit, the soul. Think any form of ghost. Spirit quite literally acts as this quote states. This life-giving force interconnects and binds all things in existence as one. It brings life and sentience to the universe, but also acts as the fundamental glue of the universe. In high concentrations, spirit binds everything together. With a lack of spirit, things decay, separate, and vie for dominance. The second part is plasma. Plasma is the four elements: earth, fire, air, and water. When a high amount of spirit is present, the elements are all bound as one. When they are separated, you get fire, air, earth, and water. The closest in-law creature that has been made up of the four elements and spirit alone is Grond, the progenitor of the Breakers, the Ogres, and eventually the Orcs of Draenor. When bound together and no spirit is present, minerals like Elementium and Blackrock ore appear. Basically, all the stuff I explained in the first half. The third part is blood cells, which is the part I'm going to be explaining. Blood cells are the six magics, and the corresponding crystals, radiations, fire, and liquids. When bound together by spirit, the closest in-game representation of the six magics together is Apexis crystals. From there you get every other form of magic that appears in the physical universe. Azerite and Titan blood in general is very, very close to being all three parts of this universal blood. The catch with the Titans is, instead of having all magics present, they are only aligned with one magic at a time, and their blood follows suit. Now, to get onto the explanation of this third part, blood cells, at the height of Arakoan society, Apexis crystals were crafted from a fusion of light and void magic, and were used to store knowledge. All the Arakoa had to do was touch one of those crystals, and they would gain the knowledge of that crystal, and possibly the experiences of the crafter. Now, where I could just say the Apexis crystal icon reminds me of Azerite, The creation of the crystals is actually very telling. Why? Apexis crystals were created from a fusion of light and void. From what we know of light and void, that is technically saying Apexis crystals were created from a clash of light and void. If you believe the story of how the World of Warcraft universe was created in Chronicle Volume 1, then what the Arakoa were basically doing is recreating and harnessing the power of that clash. The clash which created the universe. So not only does that make Apexis crystals drastically powerful and make storing memories and spirits within them the least of their capabilities, it means their potential in regards to magic is near universal. The clash of light and void, to our knowledge, created everything in our universe, implying, to come back to the analogy, universal blood. Apexis crystals are the third part, blood cells, because their creation is directly linked to magic, and magic alone, not spirits, not the elements. The way Apexis crystals can form in the physical universe, even though everything in the physical universe has to be made of the 4 elements, can be explained by the highly variable states of the 4 elements. Crystals being magic refined earth, radiation being magic saturated air, all types of fire being saturated with certain types of magic, and certain liquids being magic infused water. Think holy water, though to prove Apexis crystals can occur naturally and solidify the analogy of universal blood cells, we need to go back to BC in the Vortex Summit and the Crystal Spine in Blade Mountain, Outland. If you played during the Burning Crusade, there's a chance you probably remember Ogre-La, the place that was full of peaceful and highly intelligent ogres that gained their enlightened state from exposure to the naturally occurring crystals in the area. These crystals were Apexis crystals. Now, where I could go on a stupidly long tangent about which parts of Frostfire Ridge from Warlords made up Blade Edge Mountain, and how the zone was specifically designed to indicate what Apexis crystals were made out of, the main points are Apexis crystals formed naturally during the destruction of Draenor as it fell into the twisting nether, where the energies of the light and void bleed together. And Apexis crystals provide the same type of intellect-raising and idea-inspiring properties as Azerite, as well as seeming to have the same soothing properties as Azerite. The real jaw-dropping bit of information, though, comes from the Apexis monuments and relics that are scattered through these areas of Blade's Edge Mountain. If you're looking at the image on the screen, you're currently watching a crystal shift through the colour spectrum. The same colour spectrum all crystals in-game, and debatably all magics in-game, demonstrate. This is also a property shared by Azerite. However, the shift through the colour spectrum is much larger than Azerite, and is continuous. Additionally, when you click on these Apexis crystals, the text simply states, "The Apexis relic shimmers, betraying a hidden intelligence within." And just to make this perfectly clear, these are naturally occurring Apexis crystals on the remains of a planet that had been specifically described as having no Titan soul within it. What's shown here is that the Apexis crystals can naturally contain sentience, spirit, raw spirit no less, spirit that to our knowledge has not formed into a sentient being, into existence. Or, to keep the analogy, it's DNA that hasn't been coded. Apexis crystals share very distinct and similar properties to Azerite. The only major differences are Apexis crystals, or more precisely, crystals are highly refined earth and lack the presence of the other 3 elements. Azerite is very close to an ore. However, as it is considered blood, it can be assumed it contains the 4 elements. On the flip side, Azerite, due to what we've been told about the substance and the name, indicates instead of having uncoded DNA, raw spirits like Apexis crystals, Azerite has coded DNA, Azeroth's spirit, fusing the elements and magic together. I'm hoping the gravity of what I'm saying is not being clouded by how quacked this analogy is. So, to quickly recap, what I'm saying in regards to World of Warcraft and its history is the Great Dark Beyond was created by the Clash of Light and Void. The Clash created a substance I am calling Universal Blood. The substance was made out of 3 key components: plasma, or in other words, the 4 elements fused together; blood cells, the 6 magics combined together into possibly white magic and/or Apexis crystals; and DNA, spirit, the glue that kept it all together, and is the foundation of life in the universe. As the universe decayed, everything separated. Plasma turned into the 4 elements, blood cells split into the 6 magics, and what you get is the current cosmology and the knowledge of the universe we have today. Minerals that come close to universal blood plasma are Elementium and Blackrock ore. They, however, lack spirit. Minerals that come close to universal blood cells are Apexis crystals. The most powerful beings and items in the universe are the ones that have successfully managed to fuse multiple magics and elements together, or beings that control vast amounts of spirit. The Titans are so powerful because they managed to fuse the 4 elements of a world and the predominant magics of that world together. Titan blood, like Azerite, is the product of that fusion. It is extremely coveted by most beings in the universe because of the power it contains. Mortal blood is very similar to Titan blood. In Maradon from Vanilla, Pandaria, and even Chronicle Volume 2, the requirements for making flesh creatures becomes rather clear. What mortals lack in comparison to the Titans, though, is spirit, as in literal amount and size required to hold vast amounts of elemental magic and magical power. From there, if you break down these rules into microcosms, basically everything starts to make a lot of sense in regards to the World of Warcraft universe. From why there is a difference between earth, blood, and crystal, to why amber, tree's blood that appeared in Pandaria, was so powerful, and even giving a relative explanation as to why mortals seem to have an infinite potential. This theory, however, is not foolproof. Examples are, I cannot explain why arcane magic has the ability to bleach creatures white, and I am still debating as to whether white magic is a purer version of all 6 magics combined together, or whether that's the physical universe's version of spirit, as in the element spirit, and that's what it looks like in its magical form. To continue this pseudo-theory on for just a bit longer, you've probably caught on by now that I have yet to mention a very important entity, especially as I've been mentioning white magic. Mind-blowingly enough though, there may actually be an explanation behind Elune in this theory. What am I talking about? Well, Apexis crystals have this really odd bit of lore attached to them, minus the poor grammar and minus the gameplay the quest is attached to. One configuration of stars causes unusual vibration in crystals strewn across Draenor's relics of the ancient Apexis. Some swear the crystals will multiply when left unattended beneath the night sky, but none has seen this phenomenon firsthand. A skilled diviner can use Apexis crystals to reveal oil deposits beneath the earth. Now, if universal blood turns out to be a thing, and this piece of lore is accurate, then I quack you not, Elune and every other moon is quite possibly a spirit filter, and moonlight is the product of that filtering, making the moon's role in the greater universe to take spirits, coded DNA, like the Night Elves, and convert their spirits into raw spirits, uncoded DNA, and then project it back onto the worlds they orbit. But not only that, moons in real life reflect the light of the sun. So what if Elune converts the light and possibly other magics into spirit? Or at the very least extracts spirit from different forms of magic? Or does she fuse magic and spirit together, making her and other moons some of the most powerful beings in the universe? If Apexis crystals grow under starlight, it means that the white light of the moon and stars is quite plausibly raw spirit, or the 6 magics of the universe combined with spirit in a magical form. At present, I'm leaning towards the second option, but it could be either. The scary thing is though, this explains 3 completely unrelated bits of lore. The first thing this explains is the term life binder. It's always been implied that the Pantheon did not have the innate power to create spirit, but they apparently had the power to bind it. If the stars and moons convert, or are just made up of spirit, then they are probably the source of all new souls and spirits for quite possibly every planet in the Great Dark, including Azeroth. And in turn, nature's role is to be the photosynthetic sponge, the universe's way of binding and spreading spirit across worlds in the Great Dark. This also gives a very practical explanation as to why the Titan's process of waking a world soul follows very specific steps, and why ANR is required for this to occur. In turn, this also explains a lot about the engine of Alex Shah from Pandaria, and how it was apparently the place Thunderkin created life, not Throne of Thunder. How? Well, firstly, Shah, for the most offhand reason, means light in Draenei. If that is the legit translation of Shah, then I'd take a good guess the full translation of Engine of Nalakshar is Engine of Starlight, or Twilight, take your pick. Though, you should also know, the discs that are suspended in the engine have counterparts in Antorus the Burning Throne. And not only that, both sets of rings are laid over certain pre-existing constellations, as if they were stencils outlining certain shapes. For me, this finally explained all those constellations in Uldar. The Titans don't only have the power to sculpt bodies, they also seem to have the power to sculpt spirit, to turn uncoded DNA into coded DNA. The second thing this piece of lore explains is how Centaur were created. One keeper and one elemental princess should not have the power to create life. But whatever Mara was seems to be full of white crystals. And if Zeta was related to Cenarius, the son of the moon, and the ability to shape spirit was inherited from his grandmother, Elune, it makes sense why the process of creating a centaur wasn't difficult. While similarly, Theradras, an elemental aligned with the old gods, would have also found making flesh bodies for the centaur relatively easy. due to the old god's corruption. The last thing this phenomenon with the moon and Apexis crystals may explain is one of the lines from the Tauran creation stories, one of Shinies and Lucky's favourite pieces of lore to mull over. Thus her loving gaze turned day into night for the first dawning of the world. The line is saying dawn occurred when the moon rose. That doesn't make sense because dawn arises with the sun. However, if the moon is the source of all life on Azeroth, of spirit on Azeroth, then, of course, the dawning of the new world came with the night, because as the moon's light shone, life came with it. In all, that is the pseudo-theory connection to universal blood and how the universe in World of Warcraft works. The moons end up being very, very important to the cycle of the universe overall, and it's also quite possible that they are extremely OP. Now, there's this one conspiracy that comes with universal blood theory. Though, to say this is a conspiracy theory would be an understatement. So I'm just warning you now, you may end up triggered or laughing in hysterics at what I'm about to say. Understood? Cool. So in Three Sisters comic, the comic about the Windrunner sisters and their reunion in the lead up to BFA, for some strange reason has a segment where you find out what the sisters called each other when they were very young. Vereesa was Little Moon, Illyria was Lady Sun, and Sylvanas was Lady Moon. You can probably already see where I'm going with this. Following this comic, you get Before the Storm, another prelude to Battle for Azeroth. And when Sylvanas touches Azerite in the book, she gets what can easily be called a delusion of godhood. She realizes that destruction and creation are intimately intertwined, and that she could bring both to the world. Or at the very least bring death to Azeroth. Now, the question I ask you is, what type of god is Elune if universal blood theory pans out? The answer is a god of death and creation. Could Sylvanas try going after Elune in the long run? Possibly. Though, what I'm more thinking is Sylvanas maybe becoming, or is, the avatar and or dark avatar of Elune. Kind of similar to troll prophets and or previous priestesses of Elune. Now I know, this is absolutely quacked, but there are just certain things that have no reason to line up as closely as they do. Like, as one example, take the embrace of the Blue Child and Elune, the White Lady, in comparison to Vereesa, Little Moon, and Sylvanas, Lady Moon, during war crimes. I mean, I know I'm quacked, but am I the only one who thinks that's a bit of a strange coincidence, considering the connection between the two was beyond abstract to begin with? However, then you get a very specific point that hints at a connection during the lead up to BFA. I guess, minus the abundance of evidence that points against what I'm saying, I'm pretty sure Argus having a world soul and then being teleported into the skybox was a pretty unlikely, if not in the realm of impossible situations that could have occurred during Legion. Yet, now it's happened and, well, seems pretty normal. Sylvanas having some connection to Elune, present where it may seem impossible, may not in future, but I guess we'll see. The last thing I want to mention about this universal blood theory is that if you're basically hopped on board, you're probably thinking that overall there's not really anywhere else you can go with the lore. Well, interestingly enough, there is. Because I didn't mention these things because I didn't know where to fit them in to the explanation, but in Blade's Edge Mountain, there are these creatures called Aether Rays. And the reason why they are extremely important is because of the initial name they have, Aether. Why is that important? Well, Aether in ancient Greek mythos is basically the term for upper air, the air the gods breathe. And two concepts it's closely connected to is Cerberus and Tartarus. Tartarus being the underworld and Cerberus being the abyss. And where these could easily be attributed to the light, void, and death, if you haven't figured out already, I'm a bit of a quack. The assumption I'm making of one creature from BC and what has been said about BFA and how it is apparently going to be opening up new avenues for lore in World of Warcraft is that if you've ever looked at the Cosmology, you'd notice that there are 4 star-like shapes in the corners, and they really have no explanation, other than representing 4 alignments that a character can take in an RPG. What I'm willing to speculate is 1 represents the physical universe, 1 represents Aether, 1 represents Tartarus, and another one represents Cerberus. And somewhere along the line, either towards the end of BFA or into the next expansion, we're going to break something, as in fundamentally break the universe. And what we'll end up doing is introducing a myriad of new rules and concepts into the universe. What I'm basically saying with Aether, Tartarus, and Cerberus is that we sit in the physical universe. It has its cosmology. However, go to Aether, it also has its cosmology, with quite possibly different rules. The same with the Abyss, Cerberus, and the same with the Underworld, Tartarus. And to break those universal barriers, well, let's just say I'm very excited to see what would come. That's it for my Azerite theory. Do you think it's plausible? Or do you think it's a bit mad? Or do you have your own? Leave a comment in the chat if you do. Or come join me in the Shinies and Lucky Dudes Discord. The link will be down below. I'm there most days, so if you ever want to talk about speculation or lore, I'll gladly oblige. Until next time though, have a nice day.